Hello, today we will explore a mysterious case that took place at a famous tourist destination in South Korea. That place is Yongso Valley, located in Gyeonggi Province. Known as a paradise for relaxation, Yongso Valley boasts stunning scenery with a crystal-clear stream winding gracefully through lush green trees. The valley has a campsite where visitors can enjoy picnics, barbecues, and breathe in the fresh air. Especially noteworthy is the Yongso Valley waterfall, with its cool, refreshing water attracting a large number of tourists. This place should have been a sanctuary for beautiful memories, yet it became shrouded in a dark shadow after a sudden accident. Initially believed to be a simple mishap, the case later took a dramatic turn as the media began investigating and uncovered a series of suspicious details. So, what terrifying secrets lie behind the peaceful beauty of Yongso Valley? Let's now turn back time to June 30th, 2020. On that fateful Sunday at 8:24 p.m., the Gapyeong police station in Gyeonggi Province received an emergency call. A 39-year-old man had been reported in distress after jumping into Yongso Valley and was suspected to be trapped underwater. Rescue teams were immediately dispatched to the scene. However, due to the remote location, they only arrived at 9:00 p.m. Unfortunately, the victim was retrieved in a drowned state. The autopsy revealed signs of drowning in the lungs with no other physical injuries. The police concluded that the man had died from accidental drowning while struggling in the water. At first glance, everything pointed to a tragic accident, and the case seemed closed. The victim was identified as Yoon Sang-yup, 39 years old, an employee at a large company with a decent income. Around 3:00 p.m. that same day, he had come to Yongso Valley with his wife and a group of 7 friends to enjoy a weekend trip. What was meant to be a joyful getaway turned into a nightmare. The victim's wife, Lee Eun-hae, 28 years old and 11 years younger than him, was naturally devastated by her husband's sudden death. The couple had been married for 3 years. Strangely, neither their families nor friends knew how the two had met, as they had registered their marriage without holding a wedding ceremony. They had a 6-year-old daughter, but she was adopted and not their biological child. The unexpected death of the family's main breadwinner left a significant financial burden. However, it turned out that Yoon Sang-yup had taken out multiple life insurance policies totaling about 800 million KRW, approximately 14.8 billion VND. The sole beneficiary of all those policies was his wife, Lee Eun-hae. If she received the payout, her financial burden would be significantly eased. Therefore, 5 months after her husband's death, Lee Eun-hae officially filed a claim for the insurance payout. But things didn't go as smoothly as she expected. The insurance company detected some suspicious signs and rejected her claim, stating that further investigation was needed. Although Lee Eun-hae filed several complaints, the company stood firm, even hinting that if she refused to cooperate with the investigation, she might not receive any payout at all. Cornered, Lee Eun-hae made a critical decision. 9 months after the incident, in March 2020, she proactively contacted a famous investigative TV show in South Korea called Want to Know the Truth, hoping the media's influence would pressure the insurance company into giving her the money she believed she deserved. On national television, Lee Eun-hae tearfully recounted her experience, accusing the insurance company of using threatening language to intimidate her, invading her privacy, refusing to fulfill their compensation obligations, and repeatedly forcing her to relive her husband's death, causing her severe emotional trauma. After receiving Lee Eun-hae's plea for help, the investigative program Want to Know the Truth launched a deeper investigation into the case. They reached out to one of the key witnesses present at the scene that day, Mr. Choi. After some hesitation, Mr. Choi decided to reveal everything he knew. He confirmed that he had indeed joined the group that day, though he was not close to the victim, Yoon Sang-yup. Instead, he was quite familiar with Lee Eun-hae. Mr. Choi mentioned a peculiar detail. When Lee Eun-hae introduced Yoon Sang-yup to him, she did not refer to him as her husband. Instead, she vaguely called him a close older brother, which confused Mr. Choi. Throughout the trip, he felt that something was off. Lee Eun-hae seemed to treat Yoon Sang-yup with disdain and even appeared to deliberately join others in bullying him. Before everyone went into the water, Lee Eun-hae forced Yoon Sang-yup to smash a watermelon on the rocks using his head. He reluctantly complied and afterward held his forehead in visible pain. Later, while everyone was by the water, Yoon Sang-yup floated on an inflatable tube. Lee Eun-hae and another man kept teasing him, making gestures as if they were about to flip the float. Yoon Sang-yup looked terrified and repeatedly pleaded with them to stop, saying, "I was wrong, please don't do this." But instead of stopping, they shook the float even more aggressively. Mr. Choi went on to describe what happened next. Before they left the valley, Lee Eun-hae suggested that everyone jump into the water one last time. Everyone agreed except for Yoon Sang-yup, who remained silent. Lee Eun-hae appeared slightly annoyed and said, "All the other men have jumped. Why won't you?" Hearing that, Yoon Sang-yup hesitated for a moment, then finally summoned his courage and jumped from a height of about 3 to 4 meters into the water. As he fell, he let out a scream, and after that, events unfolded just as reported in the media. The film crew from Want to Know the Truth visited the scene of the incident with Mr. Choi. He pointed out the exact location where the accident occurred. Because the spot was quite far from the shore, the others in the group could not immediately detect anything unusual. At the end of the interview, Mr. Choi frankly stated that the scene looked like an accident, and it would be very difficult to determine whether there was any human involvement. After the incident, Mr. Choi cut off all contact with Lee Eun-hae. Near the site of the accident, there was a warning sign stating that the area was prone to accidents. Locals living nearby all considered it a dangerous place. Rarely did anyone dare to camp there at night, let alone swim in the stream. The investigation continued as the film crew visited Lee Eun-hae's residence in Bayans. To their surprise, the house, registered under Yoon Sang-yup's name, appeared to be occupied by Lee alone. Meanwhile, Yoon Sang-yup, despite having a decent income, had been living in a shabby semi-basement room in another area with low rent. Why would a man who owned a home live in such poor conditions? Even more puzzling was that, despite the cheap rent, Yoon often fell behind on payments. At the time of his death, 2 million won had been deducted from the 3 million won security deposit due to overdue rent. Shortly after his death, Lee Eun-hae quickly contacted the landlord to retrieve the remaining 1 million won. Why would a corporate employee end up in such dire straits? According to the landlord, Lee Eun-hae rarely visited Yoon Sang-yup. On the rare occasions she did, she was always accompanied by a mysterious man who drove her. The real estate agent who helped them purchase the house also recalled that the relationship between Lee Eun-hae and Yoon Sang-yup was extremely distant, nothing like newlyweds. Instead, they seemed more like ordinary acquaintances or classmates. All these observations led the film crew to suspect that the couple's relationship was far more complex than it appeared on the surface. At this point, Yoon Sang-yup's sister also spoke up, and her statements brought even more critical information to light. She revealed that after her brother passed away, Lee Eun-hae showed little to no grief. On the contrary, her life appeared to grow increasingly cheerful. She indulged in expensive water sports, frequently traveled abroad with her daughter and friends, and flaunted her wealth on social media. Most importantly, Yoon Sang-yup's sister confirmed that her brother was terrified of water and couldn't swim at all. As his wife, there was no way Lee Eun-hae wouldn't have known this. Yet on the day of the incident, she had insisted that he jump into the dangerous valley, right into the deep water. Yoon's sister was convinced that his death was no accident, and determined to find proof, she handed over Yoon Sang-yup's old phone to the investigative team, hoping they could recover any lost data. Fortunately, thanks to the efforts of the technicians, the phone's data was successfully restored. But the contents inside revealed an even darker truth. The information found on the phone left everyone in shock. An employee at a major corporation with an annual salary of up to 60 million won was completely controlled by his wife when it came to finances. Yoon Sang-yup himself was virtually penniless. He even had to beg his friends to lend him 3,000 won just to buy a bowl of noodles. This level of financial ruin was almost unbelievable. Data recovered from his phone also revealed that he was burdened with massive real estate debt. He had signed multiple contracts to purchase apartments and villas, but was unable to make the payments, leading to multiple breaches of contract. His bank accounts also showed several suspicious financial transactions. Due to the overwhelming debt, Yoon Sang-yup had filed for personal bankruptcy. He even bought a climbing rope, seemingly with the intent to end his life, and left messages resembling final words while talking to himself through a secondary chat app account. Despite carrying this crushing financial burden, he was still forced to go on multiple overseas trips at the request of Lee Yun-hae. Could this be a case of psychological manipulation? Audio recordings recovered from his phone shed further light on the toxic nature of their relationship. In one recording, Lee Yun-hae can be heard harshly demanding money from Yoon Sung-yeop. When she learned that he had used up his money to pay rent, she immediately lashed out, scolding and controlling him. The conversation didn't resemble anything like what one would expect between a married couple. The recordings also revealed that Lee Yun-hae had even forbidden Yoon Sang-yeop's family from visiting the house registered under his name and used insulting language toward them. Shortly before the incident, Yoon Sang-yeop was heard crying, saying he couldn't take it anymore and suggesting they separate. At that moment, Lee Yun-hae's attitude suddenly shifted. She became unusually gentle and started apologizing. The deeper the investigation went, the more disturbing details surfaced. Lee Yun-hae's image became increasingly frightening. The film crew began to question whether the tragedy at Yongso Valley was truly just an accident. It was discovered that Lee Yun-hae had a criminal record dating back to the age of 18, primarily for theft. Her usual method was to meet men at motels, and while they were in the shower, she would steal their valuables and flee. While a few of these crimes were committed with accomplices, most were carried out by her alone. One individual claiming to be a victim came forward online, accusing Lee Yun-hae and her accomplices of setting him up. He alleged not only was he robbed, but he was also photographed in compromising situations and subsequently blackmailed. In the end, he was forced to pay 3 million won. Lee Yun-hae's romantic history also left many people stunned. Before marrying Yoon Sang-yeop, she appeared to have gone through multiple marriages or romantic relationships. What's concerning is that some of her ex-boyfriends experienced unexpected accidents. For example, in 2010, when she was 19 years old, Lee Yun-hae lost her first husband in a traffic accident. The police thoroughly investigated the case and concluded it was an accident. Lee Yun-hae received an insurance payout from the incident. In 2013, while diving in Pattaya, Thailand, with another husband, he drowned. A man claiming to be the victim's brother said that there may be someone involved in the incident and that Lee Yun-hae was hiding something. However, he also admitted that after his brother's death, the insurance money was paid to the family, and Lee Yun-hae did not receive any benefits. The film crew also contacted a wealthy man who was once engaged to Lee Yun-hae. He recalled a bizarre wedding where the bride's side had very few guests, and their behavior was extremely odd. It was later discovered that the people introduced as her parents were actually actors she had hired. This staged act ultimately made the man come to his senses and call off the wedding. He admitted he was still frightened when recounting that if he hadn't discovered the truth in time, he might have become another Yoon Sang-yeop. In an interview with the film crew, this man said Lee Yun-hae was extremely skilled in psychological manipulation, making it easy for people to fall for her. If he hadn't noticed the red flags, he would likely have been her next victim. Suspicious timelines also surfaced. Information revealed that during her early relationship with Yoon Sang-yeop, Lee Yun-hae was still dating and even held a wedding with another man. However, shortly after the ceremony, that man abruptly canceled the marriage. Just a few months later, Lee Yun-hae quickly registered her marriage with Yoon Sang-yeop. This rapid change in partners raised suspicions about her motives. Even during her marriage to Yoon Sang-yeop, Lee Yun-hae didn't change. She continued a close relationship with a lover named Jo Hyun-soo. Jo Hyun-soo was the mysterious man linked to the Yongso Valley incident and was accused of taking part in the bullying of Yoon Sang-yeop. He was also frequently seen driving Lee to and from Yoon Sang-yeop's rented apartment. After Yoon Sang-yeop's death, Lee Yun-hae and Jo Hyun-soo no longer hid their relationship. Security cameras captured them just 2 days after his death, wearing morning clothes and entering Yoon's rented apartment to take away some belongings. A month later, they returned and took a computer. Yoon Sang-yeop's family claimed that many valuable items were missing. Was Yoon Sang-yeop's death connected to Jo Hyun-soo? The film crew found Jo Hyun-soo's business card in Yoon Sang-yeop's wallet. They contacted him using the phone number on the card. During the call, Jo Hyun-soo didn't answer any questions directly. Instead, he got angry and demanded to know how they had obtained his number. Ultimately, he gave no explanation and hung up. Now let's return to the core suspicion, the massive life insurance payout. The investigation uncovered an astonishing coincidence. At the time Yoon Sang-yeop drowned, it was just 4 hours before the maturity date of one of his major life insurance policies. Was this merely a coincidence? 2 years before the incident, Lee Eun-hae had taken out several large life insurance policies for Yoon Sang-yeop, with monthly premiums totaling £700,000. This financial burden left Yoon Sang-yeop impoverished, to the point where he couldn't even afford basic meals. If his death was ruled an accident, Lee Eun-hae stood to receive up to $800 million in insurance compensation. Even more disturbing evidence began to emerge. The investigation revealed that 4 months before the drowning incident, Lee Eun-hae had already tried to harm him. She cooked a pot of soup for Yoon Sang-yeop, after which he felt sick. But fortunately, he survived. Later, Lee Eun-hae texted her lover Jo Hyun-soo saying, "I put a lot of fish blood in the soup, and yet he still didn't die." 3 months later, at a fishing spot, she tried again. Lee Eun-hae pressured Yoon Sang-yeop, who could not swim, to go into the water. As he flailed and nearly drowned, she simply stood by, showing no sign of concern. Luckily, a friend who was with them sensed something was wrong and managed to save him. All of these signs suggested that insurance fraud was nothing new to Lee Eun-hae. She and Jo Hyun-soo had also been previously accused of faking stolen luggage claims to collect travel insurance payouts during overseas trips. In October 2020, the Korean investigative show Unanswered Questions aired a documentary on the case, exposing the truth and sparking national outrage. As a result, Lee Eun-hae not only failed to collect any insurance money, but her alleged crimes, including suspicions of murder involving her and Jo Hyun-soo, were brought fully into the spotlight. The show's host said that during interviews with Lee Eun-hae, he felt something inexplicably eerie. She showed no signs of grief over her husband's death. In fact, she casually admitted that on the day of the incident, she, her husband, and her lover had all gone out together. Her unsettling level of honesty only deepened the public's suspicions. Meanwhile, Yoon Sang-yeop's sister filed a petition with the Blue House, the presidential office, demanding a thorough investigation and justice for her brother. The petition received thousands of signatures in support. As for Lee Eun-hae, she sued the program Unanswered Questions for defamation, seeking $100 million in damages. However, the court dismissed the case, ruling that the program's content was based on verified facts. After Lee Eun-hae's identity was made public, an old video resurfaced and once again stirred public outrage. The video, recorded in 2002, showed a 13-year-old Lee Eun-hae participating in a TV program that helped low-income families renovate their homes. In the footage, she appeared as a well-mannered, devoted child, caring wholeheartedly for her disabled parents. Always optimistic, cheerful, and dreaming of helping others like a little angel. Lee Eun-hae came from an extremely poor family. Her parents were both paralyzed from the waist down and lived on a government subsidy of $450,000 per month. Her mother said in the program, "Every time I think about Eun-hae's future, I get so worried I can't sleep." In the video, young Lee Eun-hae showed a completely different side of herself. She lovingly cared for her parents and, despite their harsh living conditions, maintained a bright and positive attitude. Because her room was used to store her parents' wheelchairs, she had to sleep in the same bed with them. Yet instead of complaining, she shyly admitted she had bad sleeping habits and apologized for it. When the renovated house was finally completed, Lee Eun-hae beamed with joy. Smiling into the camera, she said that one day she too wanted to help people in need. This image of a kind-hearted little girl starkly contrasted with the current image of a cold-hearted woman suspected of murdering her husband. A revelation that shocked and outraged not only the show's original host, but also countless netizens. This case exemplifies the complexity and duplicity of human nature. Under public pressure, the prosecution, which had initially ruled the incident an accident, admitted to errors in the original investigation and issued a formal apology to Yoon Sang-yeop's family. They also announced that the case would be reopened. However, they faced a major legal challenge. At the time of Yoon Sang-yeop's death, Lee Eun-hae and Jo Hyun-soo did not physically harm him directly, making it difficult to legally prove murder through inaction, i.e., failure to rescue. After 6 months of additional investigation, prosecutors finally concluded that Lee Eun-hae and Joo Hyun-soo had deliberately failed to save Yoon Sang-yup, leading to his death. The police charged them with murder by omission, attempted murder, insurance fraud, attempted violation of the Special Act on the Prevention of Accidents, and more. Testimonies indicated that when Yoon Sang-yup was drowning, Lee Eun-hae and Joo Hyun-soo had the means to rescue him, but chose not to. Additionally, Lee Eun-hae was accused of illegally using Yoon Sang-yup's credit card, misappropriating at least 200 million won. Evidence showed that as Yoon was struggling in the water, the two stood by without taking action. They had also financially exploited him over a long period, extracting hundreds of millions of won. Just as the police were about to arrest them, the couple fled. A nationwide manhunt was launched immediately. One report mentioned that a man resembling Joo Hyun-soo had been seen in a narrow alley near a motel a few days prior, smoking with a woman who looked like Lee Eun-hae. Another witness claimed to have seen a woman matching Lee Eun-hae's description at a nearby subway station. In addition to tracking down eyewitnesses, the police also began to dig into the couple's network of connections to find further leads. A man claiming to be a high school classmate of Joo Hyun-soo said he had been in contact with Jo until recently, but cut ties after Jo kept asking to borrow money. This individual also revealed that during his lifetime, Yoon Sang-yup was coerced by Lee Eun-hae and Jo Hyun-soo into investing a large sum of money in illegal gambling activities. On the fourth day after the nationwide arrest warrant was issued, police were able to trace the movements of the two fugitives. They had gone on a 2-day, 1-night trip to the outskirts of Gyeonggi Province with some friends. Ironically, to avoid being detected, they used only wonbae or their friends' bank cards throughout the trip. Despite their precautions, the police successfully tracked them down and discovered their hideout. Although their location had been identified, investigators determined that forcing a confrontation might backfire. Instead, they adopted a different strategy, contacting Lee Eun-hae's father to persuade the pair to surrender. After 123 days on the run, Lee Eun-hae and Jo Hyun-soo were captured at a motel in Goyang City, Gyeonggi Province. The hideout contained only a few water jugs and virtually no belongings. When arrested, both appeared exhausted and emaciated, offering no resistance. As they were being transferred, reporters swarmed the scene, but the pair remained silent and did not respond to any questions. During the prosecution's interrogation, they refused to cooperate, citing the lack of legal counsel as the reason for their silence, and declined to testify. Regarding their presence at the scene of the incident, the 4 friends who had accompanied Lee Eun-hae and Jo Hyun-soo that day came under investigation for potentially aiding and abetting criminals. 2 of them were arrested for providing financial support and securing lodging for the fugitives during the manhunt. Before fleeing, Lee Eun-hae and Jo Hyun-soo had filed nearly 100 defamation lawsuits against netizens and received settlements ranging from hundreds of thousands to several million won. Thus, their arrest was met with public schadenfreude online. Yoon Sang-yup's sister also shared her thoughts online, stating that she couldn't stop crying after watching the video from that day. She lamented that her brother had treated the pair with sincerity, but was repaid with cruel betrayal. Prior to the trial, Lee Eun-hae submitted a handwritten statement of about 1,600 words in an attempt to justify herself. She admitted to speaking harshly to Yoon Sang-yup, but denied attempting to poison him with pufferfish toxin, claiming everyone consumed it together. As for her escape, she said she fled simply out of fear of being arrested. However, her excuses held no weight in the face of overwhelming evidence. Lee Eun-hae also claimed that her refusal to cooperate with the investigation stemmed from a fear of being falsely accused, which is why she chose to go on the run with Jo Hyun-soo. 3 years after the incident, in October 2022, the shocking case was brought to trial at the Incheon District Court. The defendants, Lee Eun-hae and Jo Hyun-soo, were charged with murder by omission, attempted murder, and other crimes. The courtroom was packed with reporters and spectators. Lee Eun-hae and Jo Hyun-soo entered the courtroom dressed in light blue and dark blue suits, respectively. Throughout the trial, Lee Eun-hae sat upright, listening attentively, occasionally repeating, "I am not guilty." Jo Hyun-soo maintained a calm demeanor, keeping his eyes mostly on the judge, occasionally bowing his head. Regarding the 2 friends accused of aiding the fugitives, Lee Eun-hae tearfully denied involving them, claiming she never asked for help and expressing regret that her actions dragged them into trouble. She added that had she known her friends would be implicated, she wouldn't have stayed on the run for so long. Jo Hyun-soo apologized for the social turmoil he caused and for wasting public resources. He also expressed remorse for the harm done to others. One of the most striking aspects of the case was how Lee Eun-hae manipulated Yoon Sang-yeop emotionally and psychologically. A judge's comment perhaps summarized the tragedy best. To Yoon Sang-yeop, Lee Eun-hae and Jo Hyun-soo were demons he should never have met in this life. After reviewing all the evidence, the court found both defendants guilty. Lee Eun-hae was sentenced to life imprisonment. Jo Hyun-soo received a 30-year prison sentence. Both defendants appealed the decision, but the Supreme Court of South Korea upheld the original ruling. The two friends who helped them hide were sentenced to 1 to 2 years in prison. After the verdict was announced, Yoon Sang-yeop's family embraced one another and sobbed outside the courtroom. Justice, though delayed, had finally been served. The victim's family expressed their gratitude to the prosecution, while also voicing disappointment that Jo Hyun-soo did not receive a life sentence, pointing out flaws in the initial investigation. In an interview, Yoon Sang-yeop's brother-in-law shared that before the trial, the family was deeply worried due to the lack of solid evidence. They had feared the odds were stacked against them and never expected such a favorable outcome. Still, he said it was regrettable that Jo Hyun-soo did not receive a life term. On the other side, Lee Eun-hae's family protested outside the courthouse, claiming that the judge's remark labeling the defendants demons was a psychological attack on her. Additionally, the court officially annulled the marriage between Yoon Sang-yeop and Lee Eun-hae, declaring that Lee never intended to enter into a genuine marriage, and that the relationship was, at its core, economic exploitation. Even behind bars, Lee Eun-hae continued to write letters protesting her innocence throughout her trial. She claimed that on the day of the incident, Yoon Sang-yeop voluntarily jumped into the water and that she had tried to save him. She even insisted that Yoon knew how to swim and was not afraid of the water. However, these statements starkly contradicted her earlier behavior and the testimonies of multiple witnesses. Lee stated that the two had had an argument that day, and to vent her frustration, she stayed close to Jo Hyun-soo, engaging in behavior that looked like she was bullying Yoon Sang-yeop, which she claimed helped her feel better. As they were about to leave, she said she suddenly heard a splash behind her and turned to find that Yoon had already jumped in. Despite friends later saying they heard Yoon cry for help and saw him struggling, Lee claimed she heard nothing, something she herself admitted was odd. She said she threw whatever flotation devices she could find, life jackets, rings, toward him, but none helped. Lee continued to claim that Yoon Sang-yeop, the man she knew, was a confident swimmer and had even shown off his swimming skills while playing with others that day. Her father continued to believe in her innocence, heartbroken by her letters insisting she was wrongly accused. What baffled many, though, was that despite overwhelming evidence, Lee Eun-hae's appearance attracted a group of self-proclaimed fans. These individuals created online chat groups, posting irrational comments like, "She's too beautiful to be a criminal. If she's guilty, it's only because she's too pretty," and more. Their absurd defense sparked public outrage and heavy criticism, highlighting the dangerous superficiality in judging someone by looks. Eventually, the social media platforms shut down all related chat groups. In the end, both Lee Eun-hae and Jo Hyun-soo were imprisoned. This was a case steeped in greed, manipulation, betrayal, and murder, and it finally reached its conclusion. The media's involvement played a crucial role in pulling off the mask of hypocrisy. Public attention pushed for justice to be served. But the case leaves us with many lingering thoughts. How could a young woman with an innocent-looking face descend so deeply into darkness? How damaging can an unhealthy relationship become? To what extent can the lure of money distort one's humanity? This case also raises questions about the role of the media and the power of public opinion in uncovering truth. Without the investigative program I Want to Know the Truth, would the truth have ever surfaced? Would Lee Eun-hae and Jo Hyun-soo have ever been held accountable? In the end, Yongso Valley, once a scenic tourist spot, became the silent witness to a horrifying crime. Its natural beauty remains, but its tragic past will forever leave a mark on the memories of many, a stark reminder of the shadows lurking within society. The story of Yoon Sang-yeop reminds us to stay vigilant, cherish life, and be cautious of material temptations. and above all, to believe that justice will prevail, even if delayed, so that innocent souls may finally rest in peace. That's the end of today's video. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one. Goodbye.